Shiv can be described as the king of Twitter Spaces.
This tech we're in, right, is ever evolving. It's going to be pushing. If you're so accustomed to, hey, NFTs are down bad, I'm just going to leave the space. This space wasn't truly perhaps for you. Why do you see artists? Why do you see content creators? Why do you see them come to this space, right?
So it becomes so good, you can't be ignored.
I've seen creators, right, who are coming out, right? They might not have the craziest following, but then those numbers don't matter because their content is shining through. If you're hungry, if you're really passionate and have conviction in yourself, it's the best opportunity to take that front seat, right? And if you're pushing quality, I kid you not, it will be seen, it will be known. It's so easy to look up to someone who's already made it to the top, you could say. How can you say who I am solidified? Things change, things evolve.
But hey man, listen, in preparation to this podcast, I actually asked a couple of friends of mine, a couple of contacts that I have in the space, what would they describe Shiv as? And what I heard from them is, in a nutshell, Shiv can be described as the king of Twitter Spaces. So you yourself, Shiv, you've done a beautiful job, an incredible job at positioning yourself as a thought leader and as the go-to Twitter Spaces in the NFT and the Web3 space. So really, man, today I'm going to be picking your brains about how is it that you built your Twitter Spaces empire. You currently host 3 different Twitter Spaces. You've hosted some of the largest mega spaces in the NFT space, and you've had the opportunity to build your personal brand and a business around that. So we're going to be covering, what your journey looked like, and how would you recommend other people to follow your footsteps to them building their personal brand using Twitter Spaces. So before we get into that, Shiv, give us a brief origin story. Who is Shiv? How did that young 20s university graduate become a full-time Web3 Twitter Spaces host?
Yeah, when I get this question, I love it because it gets me thinking about myself, and I feel like a portion of myself, I'm still trying to discover who that person is. Who is Shiv? I think everyone has a unique idea who I am. There's my Web3 friends who know who I am, and there's my Web2 friends who know who I am, right? But if I were to describe for people like who is Shiv, right? I think I'm someone who is working towards to be known more as a thought leader rather than an influencer. Educating, leading a way that inspires other people has always been so key to me, especially coming into this space with no sense of direction, looking up to people who were it's like pushing quality over quantity, right? I wouldn't be here without those people who really prioritized taking care of the people entering in. And I think inspiring other people in a way that moves this space that we're in, this bubble we're in a better direction, it's the best thing I can ask for, right? And especially now, I think we've been through a cycle where people have now woken up and what was I doing, right? Now is the time to really push this space in a direction that makes sense, what works for you, right? And not be accustomed to our old bull market and our old cycle, right? Now is our time for the taking. So I think leading in a way that makes sense has always been so key to me, and something that what matters to me is legacy, right? There's going to be a time where the new generation comes in, the next generation, right? This tech we're in, right? It's ever evolving. It's going to be pushing even after us. And I think it's important that we leave behind a legacy for a better future, right? And who does this benefit? Benefits the whole world, right? We're talking about onboarding, bringing on the masses, right? We're the pioneers that push people to come in, right? We're the people for it. And I think that's so important to me. And it's the reason why I do what I do.
So for you, Sanza, this is interesting because you've seen the majority of your growth happening primarily during the bear market. You've started the playbook co-hosted with Sanza and Ziana, the Whale Show with obviously Whale Swoosh, and now you have the Iceberg Radio. So for you, man, during this slowing market, why would you have said that now's the right time to strike as a creator versus perhaps going to adjacent industries that are more hyped, like AI or any other industry you could think about? So what did you see in Web3 that you were like, now's the right time to strike?
I think now is one of the best times. I think the creators and the influences we had during the bull run, it was so easy to put minimal effort in and get a crazy ROI, right? The algorithm, the platform that we use, to X, it's changed drastically over time, right? There was a time where shit posting and really low effort quality copy and pasting really was just pushed heavily, right? And anyone could just really rise to the top. And now it really prioritizes unique content, high quality content. And that is a reason why a lot of previous influencers have now, you could say, fallen off, are not here anymore, or now just even fully left the space. And I say this quite often, right? When people, now's the time where people are taking the back seat. And if you're hungry, if you're really passionate and have conviction in yourself, it's the best opportunity to take that front seat, right? And if you're pushing quality, I kid you not, right? It will be seen, it will be known. I've seen creators, right, who are coming out, right? They might not have the craziest following, but then those numbers don't matter because their content is shining through. I mean, I can just tell you, how many creators do you know, right, that have, 50,000, 100,000 followers, right? But then barely get 20 likes on their posts, right? It was so easy to farm back in the day. But now, unique, genuine content, that is what's being prioritized, right? And if you're someone who truly believes in the work you have and the different unique levels you can bring, right? It will definitely be rewarded. And what I saw is, I've never been someone who was so affected by the market conditions in terms of, content creation, right? Just because of market conditions, content creators are not going to stop creating. Projects are not going to stop building, right? If you're so accustomed to, hey, NFTs are down bad, I'm just going to leave the space. This space wasn't truly perhaps for you, and perhaps you looked at it in a way to make money. And if that's the goal, there are better avenues to make money right now, right? But if you're someone who believes in the long term, right, push your vision out a year or two, even like a couple more, right? You'll be rewarded tenfold. And I talk about this, right? Because when that next generation really comes in, who are going to be the ones they look up to, right? There's times when I joined the space, the people I really looked up to was people like Seneca, right? And he's absolutely killing it, with the quality of content. And it's the next generation where people will look up to. And that's something that is for the taking now, right? Really set that foundation, find your true calling, right? Experiment, now is the best time. Truly, now is the best time, right? Especially with the people leaving on a daily basis. Rising to the top, taking that throne, you could say, has never been easier.
Beautiful. So when a rocket takes off, it spends most of its fuel during the acceleration phase at the very first 100 meters of it getting off the ground. Mm-hmm. So for you, man, take us through the very early stages of Shiv before you became the space host you were. What did that look like? Did you gain traction early on? What were your first couple spaces? Were you a solo host? What did that lift off look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first entered the space, and I can tell you the majority of the reason I entered the space because of the money, right? It was a money printer back in 2021. You could mint practically any project and make a crazy ROI. We're talking about minting something for $600 perhaps, and it going up to 30 grand in one day. That sort of ROI is the main reason why so many people join the space, including myself. And it's why so many projects were just making ridiculous, money, because they would just mint out, make millions, and people would make thousands of thousands selling it off as secondary. So I actually joined with crypto first, then I got into NFTs, really just seeing the ROI. And, I think you've heard the same before, but, I came for the whitelist, but I stayed for the community, right? This was during university, doing accounting, and I never really had a passion in accounting. I was just more so doing it for the sake of doing it. Going to university, it was such a common thing to be seen, right? You get your grades, you go to university, you get your 9 to 5, right? Nothing else was really pushed back in school. So when I really discovered the space, the really creative side that I've always had really came out, right? I've always been someone who loves being in a setting where I can truly be myself, be creative, do stuff and be rewarded, man. I think that's the beauty of the space, right? You could pretty much do anything and be rewarded as a creator. And that's beautiful. And it truly does need to be pushed more, because this is the creator space, right? Why do you see artists? Why do you see content creators? Why do you see them come to this space, right? It's because they're rewarded. So obviously, back in the day from grinding whitelists, you notice that we're slowly entering the bear market. And back then, I was a Discord dog, right? But I never really pushed myself as a Twitter creator. I was more of a consumer back then. And then when the bear market hit, right, there was no point grinding out whitelists or doing anything like that. And for someone who wanted to be full-time Web3 back then, opportunities were scarce, right? And I was not positioning myself to get one of those opportunities. So I spent the summer kind of figuring out, what do I want to do? I've graduated from university. I can't even get a full-time job in Web3. What can I do, right? And I realized it's time to build an essential skill. So this, pretty much, I actually just started learning how to code. And I kept Web3 as a side hustle. But as times went by, that side hustle, which is Web3, really started to grow. And back in the day, what I used to do is run seminars in Discord. And the reason why I did this was I actually wanted to get a whitelist. But that's where my public speaking really started off, is doing these little Discord events, doing it in a gated community. And you know, one day it struck me, right? I was having this great discussion in a private Discord. I think it was one of those private projects, right? They're invite only. And I was like, this is such a good conversation that it should be public. It should be in a Twitter space. Why does it have to be only 20 people can listen in, right? It's not going to affect anything at all. And I was like, damn, man. Let me start doing Twitter spaces, right? Let me start having these conversations. And then people can chime in, man. And pretty much a lot of things I did was for the people, right? I realized it was every time I went on Twitter, I would just see rubbish, garbage, engagement farming posts that wasn't really getting anywhere. Influencers saying they know what they're doing, but you go back and it's the same 5 posts, farming likes and engagement. And I was like, this is nothing, man. This is not taking the space in any direction. It's the reason why we are where we are right now. So I was like, okay, I'm going to step up to the plate and start doing spaces, educating, giving back to the people. And if I'm running up a space that's having hundreds of people listening in, if you're a creator, come up on the stage, showcase yourself. That's how I got to where I am, is jumping on other big spaces. And I think giving that back is so rewarding as a creator myself. So I remember my first space was saying everything I just told you, man. Like, I want to become someone who educates. Was it a great first space? No, not at all, right? I kind of just did it with some awkwardness. But it's a skill at the end of the day, right? It's a skill. And coming back each day, refining that skill has gotten to be where I am right now. And the evolution of the playbook, it wasn't even called the playbook back then. It was just spaces I was doing on different topics. And then it's the bubble that was created. I found other spaces hosts. I found Sansa and I found Ziana. And I was like, hey guys, do you guys want to co-host this with me? And 9 months later, doing it consistently every week with just perhaps a few weeks off due to traveling, it's been life-changing. I wouldn't be where I am right now if I didn't step up to the plate. And that's why I tell people, man, yes, the first few spaces were 20, 30 people max. But I had to go through those spaces. You have to go through those spaces to truly learn. And truly hey, that was a great space, perhaps. How can I take it to the next level? Then the next level. And you keep going up. That's the game, man. That's the game. You start off small and you learn as you go. That's the beauty of it.
Talking about a playbook, what are the series of things a creator that wants to start a Twitter Spaces should do to, number one, set up their stages in a good way, 2, growing and scaling that? From how do you keep your audience engaged to the hosts you have? How does one grow a Spaces show?
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? And I think it comes to yourself as your personality. And the reason why I say that is, for some people, doing daily spaces works for them. That's what they're known for. For other people, it's being known as someone who does spaces perhaps once a week and looking forward to that next week. For me, it was, hey, I want to do spaces, but I also want to remain consistent with it. If I was perhaps doing daily spaces, I probably would have been burnt out, probably would have stopped. My whole journey could have looked different. But I understood the importance of being really consistent and also providing quality. And I knew I could do those 2 things if I did my space weekly. Gives me enough time to prepare, be ready, bring on guests, and overall, main thing, not be burnt out. How many creators have you seen burnt out? How many friends we have had in the space leave due to being burnt out, right? I think I've really prioritized making sure that I'm mentally okay to come in and make sure when I do come in, I kill it. And I think it goes back to what you see in the space, right? There are major creators that perhaps don't post much, but you know when they do, it's a banger, right? So if you're someone who's coming in the space, right, really prioritize quality, right? Prioritize something that you can remain consistent at. There's no harm in trying weekly spaces, perhaps even daily. But if you realize that one side is going too left, reevaluate, right? And be like, hey man, daily spaces wasn't working for me. Let me try 3 times. 3 times not working, try once a week, right? Try what works for you and stick with it. Another thing, find gaps, right? Find gaps. It's so easy to do what someone else is doing. It's so easy to look up to someone who's already made it to the top, you could say, and copy them. But the reason why they got there is because they did what nobody else was doing. And it's your opportunity to do something that nobody else is doing, right? For me, it was doing educational spaces when most of the space was shitposting engagement farming. That's how I really stood out. And if you're someone who's a spaces host, it doesn't have to be educational. It doesn't have to be something that is, like I've seen so many other creators do. It could be something where it's fun, it's interactive, it brings people together, right? And you do it in your own unique way, right? I think finding gaps and capitalizing it, well, number one way to grow, right? And we've seen so many niche influencers grow due to that, right? Because they prioritize that one thing that nobody else is doing, and that's how you get known, right? So what I'd say is find what you're consistent with, stick with it, and find gaps, right? And that's literally the best way you could grow.
So once you have identified a gap, what are the next steps here?
It's a good question, right? I think once you've identified a gap, it's how can I bring awareness to it, right? How can I build it so people are more educated in that? How can I push it in a way that it brings people on? I'll give you an example, right? When ordinals and all of that was really popping off, right? The really niche influencers and creators that really capitalize on it, you saw their growth skyfall, right? Right? And the reason why, they brought awareness to it, they educated, they really stuck to it, and they saw growth like that. And it's no different when it comes to other pieces of content, right? Like spaces, whatever it is. There are so many different unique spaces out there. Like for example, Thread Guy's space on a weekly basis, right? It's high energy, it's interactive, it's fun, right? And then there are other shows, perhaps like What I Do with Whale, which is a game show. You know, it's different, right? It's something that nobody else is doing. So it's about how can I make the most noise in this department? And here's the thing, right? Initially, it's going to be quiet. It's going to be quiet. But something that I learned from NFT God is when you're putting out so much quality, it's hard to ignore it, right? It's so hard to ignore it. And with the algorithm that is boosting quality content, I promise you stick to it, you'll grow. There's no shortcut to it. I wish, I could tell you that, hey, now that you found the gap, you're going to get hundreds of thousands of followers. It's not true, right? It's about how can I really now remain consistent in this gap and fill a void. And over time, when people look into it, there's something there. There's something there.
So become so good, you can't be ignored. So then Shiv, the majority of people listening to this here are business owners. They want to build their own business. They want to build their community. They want to build something bigger than themselves. Make the argument for them. How does Twitter Spaces fit within a community building strategy? Fit within a business strategy for Web3 brands?
It's a great question, right? Twitter Spaces initially wasn't looked at something that was, I would say, a necessity. But as time has gone by, you can see the quality creators, the top creators, and the top projects. One of the reasons why they are where they are right now is due to social audio. And Twitter is a platform where CT is just where everyone comes to, right? And being able to have a platform where your voice is heard, it's important to capitalize on it. And the reason why I say that is we're in a space that's pretty much in its infancy, and people have lost trust. People have been burnt. People have been lied to. People have been rugged by countless projects that have promised them the world, right? From overhype and speculation to just straight, being rugged, scammed. People need reassurance, people need to gain trust in these projects and founders again, right? Yes, perhaps a great tweet or thread does go a pretty long way, but actually being out there, on a stage with your voice, as humans, that is next to nothing, right? And it's something that can't be faked is the main thing, right? I could be the biggest dickhead in the world, but if I write the best apology tweet, right, people will be like, oh, I forgive him, whatever it is, you can get away with it. But it's something else when you have emotion and conviction in your voice, when you're getting up on stage with hundreds of thousands of people listening in. That's what separates a project from being where they are right now to getting to the top, right? It's really being out there for your holders, your people, your community. The word community gets thrown around so much, but it's something that is very precious and needs reassurance, right? Trust. And that's why you see some of the top founders understanding that and jumping into spaces, addressing questions. This is a space where information does get pushed, but also a lot of misinformation. So what can you do is address all of them, through Twitter Spaces. And I think the beauty of Twitter Spaces, it's audio, right? It doesn't have to live just on Twitter. I could shoot that on YouTube, TikTok, other platforms. As things grow by, we've seen so many creators really skyrocket just due to audio. How many podcasts outside of Web3 constantly come up on our feed, right? Educating us.
Oh yeah.
This space is no different, right? So really capitalizing on it and becoming a great public speaker, it's a skill that will take you beyond this space. And if you're talking about really pushing Web3, you got to look beyond what our bubble is into the horizon, right?
So for you, how has the scale and the size of the opportunities that you've been presented to change as you rose to prominence as a Twitter Spaces host?
Yes, that's a great question. I think initially I was doing Spaces, and I still do this for the same reason, out of passion, out of love. I love what I do for the sake of doing it, regardless of money, whoever it is. I tell you, man, majority of the time that I've been in the space has been making no money, perhaps losing thousands on thousands, right? But I still came every day due to passion for the people and love. And just being really passionate about what I do and being consistent with it. And it's a skill that I constantly refine, right? Projects appreciate that. Communities really appreciate that. And a skill is something that can be monetized. You see a lot of creators being able to monetize their skills when it comes to perhaps content writing, video editing. Spaces is no different, right? And as time went by, like I said, right, produce so much quality that you go unnoticed. A lot of communities and projects really appreciate that. And I'm very blessed to say that now I'm full-time Web3. And that stemmed from doing humble spaces, right? So yeah, it's pretty amazing that I've positioned myself full-time Web3 when last year I thought it's just a dream. So what I could say is refining your skill will allow you to be monetized. It is the best way that I could put it, right? Keep refining your skill to the point where no one can just come in and copy it, but you do it to the level that it takes time, and it took months of hard work to get to that point.
But then the next question becomes how does a Twitter Spaces host monetize in the first place? We don't see you selling merch, we don't see you selling courses. How does one make money with that?
It's a good question, right? And I think Web3 is very notorious to be known anti-monetization, right? People hate seeing people monetize. I don't know how it came to be. Actually, I do.
It's not healthy.
It came back in the day with our old influencers, shilling rug projects because they got paid thousands, right? And then their community got burnt. So I see where it comes from, man. It comes from a lack of trust within our creators that has made it so hard to monetize. But someone who wants to monetize as a Spaces host, what are some ways to go about it? Yeah, I think that's a great thing to address. Now that people are being accepted to monetize, it's becoming more of an apparent thing, which is W for creators, man. Love to see it. One way you could do it, a sponsor section. It doesn't have to be crazy. It could be, hey, this space is sponsored by X, whatever it is. could be like a few seconds talking about it. I'll tell you one thing, right? If you're getting a sponsor on your show, people don't like a whole segment on it. It shuts people off, right? It's like, oh, they're shilling. Make it organic, man. Make it organic. I think if you're trying to monetize, the number one key thing to keep in mind is how can I monetize that doesn't take away what I'm doing, right? Because sometimes when you monetize something, the quality of your spaces might go down, or whatever you're doing as a creator might go down, right? So make sure you monetize with what makes sense with you. And there are times where perhaps projects might reach out to you to monetize, but if it doesn't align with who you are, I kid you not, don't take it, right? Because it'll harm you more in the long run. Really stick to it, and you'll find something that streamlines with you. So a sponsor segment, that's fine. Next thing is spaces as a skill that you can monetize. What I mean is that co-hosting, jumping onto other spaces, and being paid for that, right? And I think that's a really great and organic way of doing it, because what you're doing is just jumping onto another space and partaking in a quality conversation. And that's what I advocate for, right? If a project or a panel is asking, hey, I'd love you to come on, we even pay you, but if they're like, hey, can you shill us? Like, I would not take it, right? Best spaces are the ones where we're having organic conversation, high quality conversation, because that's what's going to bring people in. So that's number 2. I guess the third way of doing it is, and this is the trickiest one, is doing it yourself as an entrepreneur in a way that your spaces is something that can be monetized outside of just Twitter, right? I mean, pushing it on other platforms, clipping it up, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, building awareness outside of just Twitter and using that as a leverage for perhaps brands outside of Web3. That's something to consider. It's a bit of a tough one to do, but those are some of the best ways to do it. Selling your public speaking skills as a service and sponsors.
Beautiful. So sponsored section, spaces as a skill, which literally stands for SaaS as well. And then redistributing your content outside of space, outside of X. So for you, Shiv, you have a very good pulse on the market. What are some other creator trends that you are eyeing right now that you see growing?
It's a good question, right? Trends is a funny thing. Most trends in this space you've seen last pretty much 2 weeks max until they're gone. I told myself I'm not downloading Friendtech unless it lasts for 2 weeks, and after 1 week it's gone quiet, so I'm not downloading it.
There we go.
Exactly, right? So trends, people have such a short attention span that if I tell you something now, it could be irrelevant in like perhaps 2 weeks. So, but what are the trends that are sticking? I think if you're someone who's a Spaces host, it's important to diversify. And the reason why I say that is don't be held accustomed to one algorithm. I love Twitter, or X. I love it, right? I come back to it every day. But I'll be shooting myself in the foot if I literally put all my eggs into just X, right? You don't know what could happen. The next day, you could be suspended, or banned. Boom, everything's gone. I think it's so important that you are known for just being more than someone on Twitter. And I think the top creators you see in the space are now starting to push outside of just Twitter. My good friend Whale, he started YouTube. He's posting there. He has a newsletter. He has a Discord community. He's gamifying it. Has a website. He's just one example. And there are a ton of other creators doing that, right? You are a content creator at the end of the day, but you're not accustomed to one platform. So what I'll say is diversify. Perhaps if you're someone who writes a lot of threads, whatever it is, why are you not doing a newsletter, right? Email something everyone checks. If you're someone who's into social audio, the amount of people that listen to podcasts on YouTube, Spotify, even quick clips on Instagram and TikTok, why are you not posting there, right? The trends that stick are the ones where you're able to build leverage on other platforms. So when you see like TikTok is really blowing up again, boom, I'm already there. YouTube comes out with a new feature, I'm already there, right? It's important to you that you build other leverages on other platforms. And not be accustomed to trends. But yeah, go on.
So when's the Shiv newsletter dropping?
Honestly, I don't exactly know. I need to see, because here's another thing. I wouldn't do something for the sake of just doing it, right? If I'm gonna do something because everyone else is doing it, it's just a waste of time. It's about how can I do something and have my own unique way of doing it, right? If someone is signing up to Shiv's newsletter, he's not getting the same content from Zaimiri or, Whale or X other followers, like creators, right? I know that when I sign up to Shiv's newsletter, I'm getting something that's different. And I think if I address that question first, then I'll do a newsletter, wherever it is. But I think also what's important, and people don't talk about this, take breaks, man. Take breaks. I know I preach consistency and, all that a lot, but consistency, it's a marathon, man. It's not a sprint, right? And if you really want to be someone who's in the space long term, full time, you got to be taking breaks, man. This space, I understand that there are things happening every day. There's so much drama, whatever it is happening every day, that you want to know what it is. But you got to understand, that's how people get burnt out, man. People get burnt out because their screen on time is 12 hours on Twitter. And dude, it's horrible. And something that I'm doing right now is taking a strategic break on the playbook. And the reason why I'm doing that is, hey, I've been doing the spaces for 9 months. It's grown. It's done pretty well. How can I take it now to that next level? And I need to look at it with a fresh mind and not be worried about next week's space. Now that I've taken this strategic break for these couple weeks, I'm able to work on the back end, work on things like branding. How can I bring a unique level to these spaces? How can I do things on the operational side of things, right? It's important that you take breaks for your mental to come back with a unique angle, perhaps a problem that you want solved ASAP. Like, take breaks, right? Because it's a marathon, not a sprint. And if you want consistency, you need to take time off from time to time.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. So listen, man, Shiv, what is next for the Shiv brand? What are the next 3-4 steps for you?
It's a good question, right? And I think when I started off, and I think it's something that I'm still trying to discover myself. I think no one has the answer to who they are. You see a lot of creators doing really well right now, right? But I guess they'll even say the same thing. They're still trying to figure out who they are, right? We're still so early, man. Some of the top creators you've seen in the space have barely been doing their thing for less than a year. How can you say who I am solidified? Things change, things evolve, most importantly. And I'm in that evolution stage, right? I'm glad that I'm known for my spaces, for example. But I don't want to just be known for that, right? I think it's important that I'm also trying and evolving my type of content, the style of content as well. So what are the next few steps for Shiv, right? I think for me, I've always been someone in the space that has got where I am so far, and I never really solidified myself in one community. I kind of was bouncing around different communities. And for a while, I wanted to rebrand my profile picture, for example, right? And that's why I'm now a Pudgy, for example. I'm a big fan of the way they're building, the way they're going around things, for example. The building in public, it aligns with me, man. I liked being someone who is out there on the front lines, educating, not really being super mysterious in a way. And we've seen how successful the building in public has been, right? Like I said that earlier, reassuring your holders and community is so important. And I think they're doing a pretty good job of it. And also, embedding myself within a community is a superpower. It's a superpower. Why? Because that community is going to help you help you grow, support your content. It's the best thing I could ask for. So, I'm glad that I found my home, you could say, in an NFT project community. So that's one thing that I'm currently working on. The next thing I could say is, and it's what I said earlier, not be accustomed to one platform. Right now, a lot of my content, most of my content, has just been on Twitter. But I think it's important that I diversify that, right? There's so much growth on these other platforms that's for the taking. And it would be stupid not to as a creator. It makes no sense that, we should just be on Twitter the whole time. We understand Twitter's important, but it's important that you start building leverages on other platforms as well. And what does that mean, right? As a creator, and if something you want to monetize, you have other touch points. You have other touch points that you can leverage. Be like, hey, I also have a very booming newsletter that could be sponsored, right? If I'm doing video content, my whole backdrop is something that could be customized for a sponsor, for example. These different touch points are very important to consider if you're creative within the space. So those are the things I'm working on. How can I take my name outside of our bubble and kind of embedding myself within a well-respected NFT community as well?
So then for the people listening today, what would you like to tell them? Where would you like them to go next?
Oh, it's a good question. Okay, I'll give you some alpha, right? The playbook would be coming back mid-September, and expect it to be not different, because I don't want to take away from what it is, but expect it to be something that's on the next level, right? I think something that I really want to work towards is how can I build a better connection with the audience? If I'm having consistent audience join in, hundreds of people, how can I bond with them better, right? So expect when I do come back with my show that we're going to have a fun time together, whether you're on the stage or in the audience. And I want you to build a better bond with me, right? And what does that mean, right? Oftentimes you're just seeing the profile picture, my penguin. But I think, how can I add layers to that so you get to know me, I get to know you, and that connection we can make is something that's very precious. And I want to do that on a scale where I'm building a great community for the show and just who I am. So expect that mid-September. No promises, but that's what I'm working towards.
And I saw before, just literally before this this call together, Whale teased something in his kind of private subscription group. Whale and Shiv. Anything you can tell us about this?
Whale, so me and Whale, right? I think so. Yeah, I'll say this. So we've been doing the Whale show for months now, and Whale's been a good friend of mine before, his amazing success that he's had, right? I always saw the quality content that he's been posting out, so we've always been streamlined as creators within the space, and we understand the importance of what we put out. And it's the same thing I said earlier. With me and Whale, we want to take things to the next level. And we did amazing with the Whale show till season 1. But how can we come back swinging? How can we do something that nobody else has done, right? So that's what we've been working on. And expect, it's going to be a game show. They expect it to be, I can't say too much. It's going to be better, man. There's going to be more to it. I'll tell you that. And if you're someone who's going to be a participant, you're in for a treat. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of layers. It's going to be a blast. If you had fun on the Whale show, seeing all the prizes being given out, the type of site it was, expect that to be taken to the next level, man. And I think that's something that we're trying to prioritize, making it fun, right? I think we're in this space right now where things are so sensitive. People take things so drastically, right? Let's have fun, right? And that's something that we're really working towards. So we got some stuff in the pipeline. It's gonna be amazing when it drops.
I love it. Shiv, my man, thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for crushing it, man, and making the space a better place. And thank you for coming on this podcast, brother.
I appreciate it, man. It's an honor, man. Doing stuff like this, and I appreciate you reaching out, man. It really does mean a lot. And like I said prior to this, I've noticed how you've grown as a creator. I couldn't be more proud of yourself. So I'm glad that we jumped on this. It's made me realize a lot of things as well. Whenever I do calls like this where I'm reflecting on what I've done, it makes me realize that wow, I'm very grateful where I am right now.
Yeah.
But the job ain't done, right? There's so much that needs to be done. Not just from my side, but as a collective group. So, final message, go on, keep inspiring. I think that's the main thing, right? I wouldn't be where I am if those creators didn't inspire me. And we're the next generation for inspiring the next generation after that. So, yeah.
I love it, brother.